It's been around for decades, and it's essentially inflammation of the myocardium, or the muscular part of the heart, that can occur after a viral infection. We can see this with any type of viral infection. Sometimes we see it after infections like mononucleosis mono, caused by Epstein-Barr virus. But what's different with COVID is that it appears to be occurring with a higher frequency than we would expect. So normally it occurs about 1 to 5% of the time, which is pretty rare, but with COVID we're seeing it much more commonly. And the reason for that, we think, is because of two reasons. One, the virus has receptors on the heart muscle itself, so it could be causing direct damage to the heart muscle. And then the second, we've talked about this before, it kicks the immune system into overdrive, so the immune system could actually be attacking the heart muscle itself. And unfortunately, the consequence of this inflammation is that it creates scar tissue in the heart, which can then cause electrical problems or arrhythmias to occur, which is especially problematic for athletes because they're prone to that when they're out on the field and their sympathetic system is charged up, their stress hormones are released, they could have a sudden cardiac arrest.
Wow. Oh, what happened at the silver lining segment of this? Wow. All right. Doc, the Big Ten Conference says that there's just too much medical uncertainty about the medical risks to proceed with the season. Why did they say that?
Al, they said that for many reasons. The first is that athletes are more prone to viral myocarditis. So you have a group of people that's higher risk because they're more prone, and what I just talked about, this risk of sudden cardiac death. The second is we don't know what the long-term consequences of myocarditis from this virus are. Is it safe to allow these athletes to go back to play? We just don't know the answer to that. And then the third is these athletes don't actually declare themselves. So people get the virus, they recover, and they're seemingly normal. And unless you do a test on them, like a blood test looking for damage to the heart muscle or a cardiac MRI looking at their heart, you may never know that they had this complication.
Wow. This is so important to know. Now, they're saying that they'll look towards resuming sports in the spring, but if COVID is still around, what kind of tests could be used to see if it's safe to return to play? Would it just be a blood test?
Well, we do have to get back on our feet and get beyond this virus story. So a lot of experts have gotten together and developed a number of screening criteria, which if you check off all these boxes, maybe it's safe to return to play. So the first is the history. So talk to the person after they've recovered from COVID and see, do they have any symptoms that suggest damage to the heart, shortness of breath, swelling in the legs, chest pain, palpitations, any red flags there. The second is an EKG, which is an electrocardiogram that looks at the electricity through the heart, looks for those arrhythmias that we just talked about. The third is the blood test, as you mentioned, the troponin, which looks for damage. It's a chemical that tells us about damage to the heart muscle. So if that's high, that tells you may have had some damage from the virus. And then the final is an echocardiogram, which is an ultrasound of the heart that tells us about the structure and function. So for these athletes, they really have to check all these boxes before we think they might be safe to return to play, even after they've recovered from COVID and are seemingly normal.
Wow. Look, I went to Michigan. I love the Big Ten. You love college football, but this is something we need to take very, very seriously. Thank you.